So don't sell this to us as if, this is 1 + 1 = 2 kind of science. No, there is a lot of leeway here, as you can see. And I'll give you another example. Salam ala Rasulillah. Every year, the same old thing. Instead of moon sighting, it's moon fighting. Calculations, global, local, rejecting, and this and that. So let's just clarify this once and for all, inshallah, in the light of the Quran and Sahih Ahadith and proper established science. So let's take a look at that. Amongst the classic scholars of Islam, there are difference of opinions. There is what we call global, meaning that if the moon is sighted anywhere in the world, it is binding upon the entire ummah in the entire world. And there is what we call local, meaning that if the moon is sighted, it is only applicable or only a evidence for that area, not for other areas. And how far is the differences between horizons? Different scholars define differently. But there is a new bid'ah or a new innovation, which is to rely solely on calculations, no sighting of the moon, no going out and checking. And this, as Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan and other scholars have said, is an innovation. It's a bid'ah. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran has ordered us to begin the fasting of the month of Ramadan when we sight the moon and to end it as such. And the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith in Sahih Muslim said, you begin your fasting by seeing it, yani the crescent of Ramadan, and you end it by seeing it, yani the crescent of Shawwal. This hadith is authentic, of the order of the Prophet ﷺ. The Quran and hadith order us to go and sight the moon. So to rely solely on calculations is an innovation, and none of the classic scholars of Islam, none of the four madahib, not Hanafis, not Malikis, not Shafi'is, not Hanbalis, none of them accepted that. So let's leave calculations out of it. So what are we left with? Well, we're left with global and local, but there is a new mix that's come out, which is people that say we won't start the month of fasting because of calculations, nor will we end it, but we will reject the testimony of people that have cited the moon based upon calculations. It's kind of a strange opinion because in a way you're still basing it off calculations because you're rejecting people based on it, but you're still telling people to go out and look. Which is kind of funny because you tell people in those areas to go out and look for the moon, but if they see the moon, then you reject it because you say it's impossible. So why did you tell people to go out and look for the moon to begin with then? Strange, but let's talk about this. We are being sold this opinion with this idea that this is pure science. It is impossible to have seen the moon in Saudi Arabia. There is no way. Well, let's look at this. So the prediction model for this Ramadan, and this began on the 28th of February, and I've brought this up in front of you, from one of these sites, which is Crescent Watch. What do they show? They say, well, there is this ring here where you can see it easily. Then there is where it's more difficult, and then so on until this orange strip where you can only see the moon with an optical aid, meaning a telescope or something to help you find it. And past that, in that white area, it's impossible. Scientifically impossible to see the moon. No way. Even with a telescope, even with any kind of optical aid, you cannot see the moon in this area. This is below the Dinjan limit and so on. Okay. But now, interestingly, let's look at this other, again, calculations based on science on being able to sight the moon. Same date, February 28th. Now, this Ramadan, what do we see here? No, you can see the moon in those regions that earlier you couldn't, meaning the regions of Iran, of Afghanistan, of Pakistan, of India, of Central Asia, Madagascar. This area, according to the first chart, it is impossible to see the moon there. Scientifically not possible, as they tell us. But this other calculation tells us, no, it is possible with an optical aid. This all the way into Bangladesh and past on the tip of Thailand, parts of the tip of Malaysia and so on, you can see it with optical aid. So which one do we follow? Again, this is not an exact science. You're predicting the ability of people being able to see the reflection of the sun's light off the moon. So don't sell this to us as if, this is 1 + 1 = 2 kind of science. No, there is a lot of leeway here, as you can see. And I'll give you another example. Same crescent watch and moon sighting, two predicting sites that are used for this. When you look at Eid, the end of this Ramadan. Now, this is the 29th of March. So this is the end of Ramadan. It shows here that you can only see the moon in the central and parts of the US with optical aid. But the eastern part of the US, it's impossible. Scientifically not possible. The eastern part of Canada, impossible. Central America, impossible. Cuba, impossible. Florida, impossible to see the moon, and let alone South America. All right. Now, let's look at the same prediction model for the same time period. This is the end of March. Again, 9th of March. According to moon sightings calculations, it is possible, according to them, to see the moon with optical aids in eastern part of Canada, the east coast of the US, New York, Florida, Cuba, even the top of Southern America. So what does that tell you? Again, this is not an exact science. You're predicting things. So to reject somebody's testimony based on predictions is wrong. The Prophet ﷺ, in his time, when the Bedouin came and said, I saw the moon, the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell him what was the exact location and what was the prediction model. He told him, do you testify? He said, yes. So he accepted it. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, in the Sahih Hadith as well, he said, everybody went out to look for the moon. They didn't see it, but I saw it. And he was the only person that saw it. And because of that one sighting, the Prophet ﷺ ordained the fasting to begin. He didn't tell him, prediction models and things. No. So why would we? Why don't we stick to the sunnah? And that's what Saudi Arabia is doing. That if it is on the 29th day, now somebody could say, oh, well, you would reject it if it's on the 27th day or 26th of Ramadan. Of course we would, because the Prophet ﷺ told us the month is 29 to 30 days. It's not 28 days. It's not 27 days. So we would reject it based on the sunnah, not on prediction models. But if it's on the 29th, where it can fall that the month would either be 29 days or 30 days, then we would accept those sightings according to the principle from the sunnah itself. Now, then we get into this issue of global versus local. Well, first thing, interestingly, most of our brothers who follow Hanafi fiqh, today they take local. They're very staunch on local. But when we go into the books of Hanafi fiqh, like the mu'tamid or relied upon books such as Ibn Abidin's Radd al-Muhtar or his Hashia, he clearly states that the standard opinion of the Hanafi madhab is global, meaning that there is one global horizon that if it's seen anywhere in the world, it is binding on the entire world. And this is in Al-Hidayah as well, and so on. So, according to the Hanafi opinion, if the moon is sighted anywhere in the world, it is binding on the entire world. Okay? And that is the opinion that we find in other madhahib as well, and including many of the Hanabila, as we see in Al-Mughni and Ibn Qudama, and you find this in the Maliki books as well, in the Sharh of Al-Khalil, and so on, Mukhtasar Al-Khalil, and so on. But in the Shafi'i madhab, Imam Al-Nawawi, he mentions that if it is seen in one area, it is not binding on all the other areas. Right? So you have two opinions amongst the madhahib. The first opinion, which you could call global, is basically saying, look, the ayat are general. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us that when you see the moon, begin the fasting, it's general for the whole ummah. It's not for a specific area. And when the Prophet ﷺ, during his time, when the moon was sighted, it was binding on everybody. So that means it's generally binding on everybody in the ummah. Okay, yes, makes sense. But there is a problem. Think about it today. For example, if the moon is sighted in Hawaii, and you're telling me that it is binding on the people of Fiji. Well, if it's sighted, let's say at 7:30, it's already 5:30 p.m. in Fiji. So 7:30 p.m., the moon is sighted in Hawaii, and you call somebody in Fiji and say, you got to fast today. They said, we already made iftar. It's impossible. So, and the most likely place to sight the moon is further west, because the cycle of the moon, as Allah has ordained it, that it gets clearer as it goes west. It gets stronger, the visibility, as it goes west. So if us in San Diego, California, on the west coast of the US see the moon, if you're telling me people in China have to fast, they've already made iftar. So it really doesn't work, right?